And it's really hard to find out something about somebody's history if you don't ask them, isn't it?
I'm not in the practice of asking people on the street whether they've ever downloaded child pornography. And when I have a power relationship with a person, in this case a priest who's responding to his vicar general, to engage in a fishing expedition would be contrary to the church law in this regard.
What law says you can't ask a priest in ministry about whether he has sexually abused a child and how many, or whether he has downloaded child pornography, which is sexual abuse of children? What law says you can't ask the priest that?
Fortunately, what we had was his computer, so had he downloaded child pornography, we were going to find it out.
No, I'm just
It was
asking.
it was not at the top of my awareness at the time, since no one had mentioned child pornography.
I know, but why didn't you ask him? Why?
Jeff, why would I have, pardon me, Mr. Anderson, why would I have asked him?
Because we've got search terms all over the place here in the Setter report that says he's got a compulsive interest in pornography, and there are concerns about youth, teens, naked boys. I mean, you told me you couldn't because of church law. Tell me the law that says you couldn't ask the question of Father Shelley when confronted with this concern.
The specific restriction I'm under is that we cannot use authority to require someone to manifest his conscience.
Yeah, but if you don't ask, you can't know. So there's nothing that kept you from asking the question. You made the choice to not ask the question, correct, Father?
Many questions I didn't ask him.
You should have, shouldn't you?
No.
There's nothing that kept you from doing it. You made the choice.
I don't regret the choice I made in this regard.
Well,
Especially since, as far as I can tell, there's no reason whatsoever to think that this man ever misbehaved with children.
so you think he's safe to be a priest today?
It's a long time since I've interacted with him.
Think he's safe to be on sabbatical and telling the people that when he did leave, that he was going on sabbatical without anybody knowing his history until we made it public in court?
I don't know how that becomes a safety issue.
Well, let me put it this way. The information that we're talking about was all kept within the confines of the Archdiocese in the province of the Archbishop and those working with and for him, correct?
It was shared.
I'm not sure which information you're speaking of. Okay, we've talked for half an hour about this, so I'm not sure.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Did you send the Setter when Shelley was sent to St. Luke's, the Setter report had not been received, correct?
I don't recall the timing. I'm sure the record would establish
The
that.
record establishes it had not
Okay.
been received. When
Very
he came
good.
back from St. Luke's and they answered the questions you asked, which they did, the Setter report had not been received.
Okay.
My question to you then is, when the Setter report was received, after St. Luke's had done the evaluation and answered the questions you asked, my question to you is, why didn't you then send the Setter report back to St. Luke's and say, hey, you better take a look at this. There's more information that we have now that you need to know in order to accurately give us an assessment of the danger that exists.
You're characterizing it as more relevant information. I don't recall ever thinking that myself. More and relevant information. Again, I don't recall ever thinking that.
So when Shelley was sent to St. Luke's, what were the people in the parish told about his departure?
I think when he went to St. Luke's, very little was said because he was gone for 5 days.
That was a general practice, wasn't it, to tell the people that he was going on vacation or sabbatical or leave, and not telling them that he was really going for assessment for suspicions of misconduct?
General practice as to Father Shelley?
Just all the priests.
The general practice is to all the priests. Generally speaking, if they would be absent for a very short period of time and we were unsure of the kind of problem we had to deal with, you're correct, we probably would have said nothing, because a priest being out of his parish for 5 days is not an extraordinary event.
So he was left at the parish to continue in ministry. And that was the practice, as you described it, until you left your position as Vicar General
What was the practice?
Yeah.
that you just described?
Do you understand the question?
I'm not sure, and help me
that's
understand
okay.
what you heard. Okay.
In 2008, did you receive information that Shelley had allowed an 18-year-old parishioner to live with him in the parish?
I believe I received that before 2008.
How did you receive that, and from whom?
I think I received it from Shelley.
What did he tell you about that?
Presumably we're talking about the same thing. In 2004, when I received the material, he said that he had an extra room in the rectory, and that this young man stayed for a time with him. In
Didn't
fact,
that-
he told me, I believed it to be a lie when he was telling it to me, but he suspected that perhaps this man had accessed the computer for some of the pornography use.
So you knew Shelley was lying to you at that point.
Yes. I didn't know it, I suspected, which is why I asked the experts.
And you also knew that he had an 18-year-old living in his parish.
I'm not sure I knew the age was 18. I understood he was a young man.
Didn't that raise alarms for you?
No.
Did you ask Shelley about his relationship to this 18-year-old or so, and if he did any sexual contact with him?
I did not ask him about sexual contact. He offered some particular excuse, which I don't recall, for why he welcomed the young man into the home. I believe he was part of an extended family in the parish in between employment or something.
Well, you've been dealing with offenders and offending clerics for a long time now, Father, right? And you know about the denial business and how they lie. And you knew that Shelley was lying to you about some things here when you confronted him with that, didn't you?
I did.
Don't you think that that right there was like red flags that were just like flashing and waving and screaming? I got to ask more questions. I got to do an investigation. I got to know more.
We did do an investigation, yes. It raised no concern from me about the safety of kids.
Who was interviewed about that? You said we did an investigation.
We sent him away for assessment, and we sent his computer to experts who could tell us what was on them. I made some inquiries with the staff about I had actually already had some interaction with the staff about his leadership. Knew that he was not universally liked among the staff. I heard nothing from them about expressions of concern about his behavior with sexual behavior with any sort of individual, male, female, younger or older.
Did you ask the staff about his sexual behaviors or any red flags around it?
I think later in the summer I did. Later in the year I did.
There's no documentation of that. Are you sure of that?
No,
If you had asked, you would have documented it, wouldn't you?
I might have, yes.
Well, you say you might have. Does that mean that you're doing investigations concerning safety and or dangers that are not being documented, whether they prove to be safe or not?
My concern was not about safety or danger. No one had raised concerns about safety or danger. My concern became whether this man, by by then the word that he had possessed pornography was spreading around the parish. I wanted to know how much was that around and what was it doing to his effectiveness as a pastor.
So you're concerned about the rumors spread about the priest and some possible scandal in the priest and pornography is what your real focus at that point is.
I'm concerned about whether this man can effectively be a priest because he's clearly looked at immoral material.
At this point, you're the Archbishop's delegate for safe environment, aren't you?
No, I was his vicar general. Though.
Okay. Still responsible for implementing the safety of the children.
That's correct.
In 2012, in February, Jennifer Hesselberger, Chancellor of Canonical Affairs, finds 48 restricted files archived and moved to the basement without them being referenced to the personnel files. Did you learn that?
This is the first I'm hearing of that timing and her particular role in it.
What do
Had
you know?
you asked me, I would have presumed that Jennifer had moved the files there, since she became the archivist shortly after I left.
What do you know about 48 restricted files being in the archive?
Again, had you asked me without the prelude, I said, well, of course Jennifer moved them there when she became chancellor that fall. So I know nothing.
You know nothing about 48 restricted files being in the archive of the Archdiocese?
That's correct. Those must be the files that were in Judy Delaney's office. So someone made a decision about locating them after I was no longer there.
How many were in Judy Delaney's office?
I have no idea. 48 sounds like the size of it. Sounds like Judy Delaney's office was picked up and moved down to the files.
They were restricted because they contain evidence of crimes or sexual abuse, correct?
Or alcohol abuse, or theft of funds, or anger issues, or a consensual adult sexual involvement, or non-consensual adult sexual involvement.
Hesselberger reports also that she finds a banker box in the archive with a 3-ring binder, including the Setter report, and all of the findings made by you in the Archdiocese in 2004. Do you know anything about the 3-ring binder?
I do not.
Did you view a 3-ring binder in 2004 that was compiled?
I don't recall that. That may have been the format in which Setter gave us the report. But I don't recall it.
And just so I'm clear, you read the Setter report, didn't you?
I'm not certain that whether I read it or received a verbal summary from Bill Fallon.
Well, you relied on it in terms of the decision you made that he wasn't a risk to kids, and you claim he is an expert, and it's on the basis of your reliance on him that no report was made. Don't you think that it was your job to read it?
Once again, I was not investigating because I had no reason to investigate. I was not investigating concerns about child pornography or endangerment of children. That was not the scope of my investigation.
Because you weren't looking at that.
Because I wasn't asked, I had no reason to think that that was in play.
But the Setter report says it was. So how do you reconcile that?
And where does the Setter report say that? I mean, I'm not aware that it does say that. But
Jennifer Hesselberger does a memo, Exhibit 38, in which she details that it says that. Okay. There also is some reference to DVDs. Do you know anything about DVDs involving Shelley?
I do not.
Okay. In 2012, the records reflect that the Archdiocese is looking at a future assignment for Shelley, which is what caused her, I believe, to go to the archive. In 2012, what is your involvement with, let's see, you're still the delegate for safe environment, aren't you?
That's right.
Okay. And at St. Peter Claver.
Correct.
Okay. And so are you involved with Shelley in 2012 at all?
I had one specific involvement, yes.
What was it?
Apparently, this portion is reconstructed and the record will have to show it. Sometime in the first part of 2012, Jennifer Hasselberger expressed to Archbishop Neinstead her belief that there was child pornography in the material that was in the Archdiocese possession at the time. I was not aware of that at the time. I learned this late in the fall when, I believe from Jennifer herself, I learned that Archbishop Neinstead wanted a cover note drafted for him to the Holy See, meaning the Vatican, about the child pornography issues with John Shelley. I expressed my surprise. I said, there's no child pornography issue with John Shelley. Jennifer reported to me that she believed there was, and that in fact, at her urging, Archbishop Neinstead had gone to the Holy See to initiate the process, the disciplinary process in that regard. So I reported to Jennifer, I don't know that I ever spoke directly with Archbishop about this matter, but I reported to Jennifer that I thought we'd had an FBI guy review this stuff and that there was no concern about child pornography. She said, well, she'd reviewed it and that there was child pornography.
She showed you the images, didn't she?
She then said, I said, Jennifer, I don't believe you. The experts looked at it and said, isn't so. So then she said, well, come and look at the images.
And you did, didn't you?
I looked at about 450.
And you saw some that were borderline enough to be possible child porn, didn't you?
I did not. As a matter of fact, I was disgusted after looking at about a third, a little over a third of the files, and went back to Jennifer and said, I don't see anything here that is remotely child pornography. What are you talking about? She told me that I was wrong. I said, you're going to have to demonstrate that to me. So then she took the files and downloaded from the files the images that she considered to be child pornography. Curious practice, I thought, but nonetheless, when I then looked at them, and I think there were about a dozen, they might have been 10 or 15, it was about a dozen, it was quite apparent to me that these were not sexual images of children. And
So tell me about your training in determining what is a sexual image of a child and the age of the child when you look at it. Where do you get this expertise, Father?
So let me just say, these were not sexual images. They were not sexual images.
But they were in the pornography, and you didn't look at all of them, so you saw some that were kids, right? But they weren't sexually explicit, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
But others were.
There were sexually explicit images of adults. There were no sexually explicit images of young people of any sort.
Jennifer Hasselberger was saying, I disagree, Father. There's child porn here. We have to do something more with this, and that's why she downloaded it, and she was urging you and the Archbishop to report this, wasn't she?
Well, for a reporting point of view, of course, Jennifer is a mandated reporter as well. So I was confident that if in fact there were any child pornography that she would report it. My particular role was to prepare the cover letter for a dossier to the Holy See. After these couple of investigations with Jennifer, a couple of looks with Jennifer, I prepared a memorandum to Archbishop saying, I believe that the report from the FBI guy and from the retired police chief of 8 years ago stands up. I don't see any reason for me to question the experts. And so I offered to draft a letter to the Holy See saying that this was misreported. That's when I stopped interacting with the case.
Did you actually see the letter drafted to Cardinal, the Prefect Laveda?
I may have drafted it. I don't recall if I did that or this would have been in January-ish of 2013.
Well, there's a letter that was drafted that evidently was not sent that said that my advisors indicate to me that I may be in violation of civil law by reason of possession of child pornography
Oh
or
my.
borderline child pornography. Did you draft that letter?
No.
What happened to the letter that you drafted?
I have no idea.
Who'd you give it to?
I've sent it to the Archbishop, and I think I copied Jennifer and Father Laird, perhaps Joseph Kippers, Kueppers.
And this is a draft letter to the CDF, the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith.
That's correct.
And under the SST, you knew that all reports of child sexual abuse were now to go to the CDF as of 2001?
That's correct.
Now, Shelley is given a sabbatical, or either requests a sabbatical or is told to go on sabbatical. Do you know if he requested it or he was told?
I'm guessing it's the latter, but I do not know. I was not part of that decision-making or conversation.
And he reported to the people that he was taking a sabbatical and given a farewell party. Were you aware of that?
No.
Okay. The people in the parish were not told anything about what the Archdiocese knew, or about these letters, or about the reports, or about the evaluation, or anything else we've discussed. Do you think there's anything that we have discussed, at least, that the parishioners should have been told or warned about?
No.
Do you know if Archbishop Neinstedt discussed the matter of Shelley or any of the other priests accused or of having abused with the Vatican officials at the Ad Limina visit?
I don't know that.
Okay. Had you ever been a party to any of the previous Ad Limina visits where this had been discussed and reported?
I'm going to ignore the last part of your question about where this had been discussed and reported, because I wasn't. I will say to that, I was not a party to any of the Ad Limina visits.
Okay, well,
Yes.
that was
Yes.
the question
There
I
you go.
intended to ask.
Yes. Just for clarification, with the Ad Limina visit, each year, each time that happens, which is approximately every 5 years, the bishop is required to submit a report on the state of the Archdiocese.
The quinquennial
The
report.
Good. Quinquennial, Quinquennial. And I often coordinated the development of that report, but I never participated in the Ad Limina visit.
And the quinquennial report would also, by its nature, talk about the financial wellness and affairs of the Archdiocese, as well as any problems relating to sexual abuse.
I don't recall, by the time sexual abuse was on everyone's agenda, I don't think I was any longer in charge of the preparation. During the times when I coordinated the preparation of the quinquennial report, I do not recall a specific request from the Holy See in that regard.
To your knowledge, Father, had you or any of the other officials ever reported any sexual abuse by any of the priests in the Archdiocese to the CDF?
Yes.
Who?
All of the charter priests
When was that done?
in about 2004 or 5.
And what was that number at that time?
I don't recall.
Okay. Would that have been the first, to your knowledge, report to the CDF of sexual abuse?
From the Archdiocese, I believe so, yes.
And to your knowledge, any others made since?
I would not have been part of that since then. Is this an okay time to suggest a break?
Sure, sure.